Hi everyone. As I promised, I am going to do a quick kind of review for the final review for the final. Okay. And remember that for the final, we're going to review everything from the beginning. Of course, I'm not going to spend much time talking about definitions or whatnot. Just make sure that you read all of them because I also gave you definitions, I gave you calculations, graphs, everything. Okay. But if I'm not talking about definitions here, it does not mean that you're not getting questions on them. All right. I just don't want to waste our time. Okay. I'm going to start from chapter one and I will go back and forth between the screen and my notes. You will not see my notes. Of course, you have everything on D12, but if I'm taking a pause, it's because I'm going over the notes just to make sure that we're not missing anything. In chapter one, we had lots of definitions, as I mentioned. Do not skip them, review all of them. Important part of chapter one was opportunity cost, okay, and PPC, if you remember, production possibilities, and also budget line. So definitely make sure to review, for instance, the characteristics of budget line, like attainable, unattainable points. All right. So budget line was all about the scarcity that consumers or buyers are facing with. And then the action possibility model was again about a scarcity, but a scarcity that producers are facing with. Okay. Um, for let me check. So for PPC, let me just quickly draw my PPC here for you. So this is chapter one. Chapter one. We had PPC and we had budget line. Read budget line again. Review budget line. I'm just going to talk a little bit about PPC. So um, we were assuming that our economy produces only two goods, let's say good A and good B. I apologize for my handwriting. It's a little bit hard to write anything here in this little board that I have. Okay, so this was our PPC. I want you to pay attention to the definition of PPC. Remember that PPC was a boundary between all the goods and services that we can produce. We call them attainable. Remember, attainable. And those goods and services that are unattainable with given resources and the technology we had. We also talked about efficient and inefficient points. Remember, only points on the PPC were efficient. Any point inside PPC is attainable, but a point inside is inefficient because we are not using all the resources we have. So we have some of our resources that are unemployed. Okay. Definitely review the assumptions that we also made to draw our PPC. Okay. And then we use the concept of PPC to calculate opportunity cost. And if you remember opportunity cost or OC, so OC stands for opportunity cost, was the amount of goods and services that basically we are giving up to produce something else that we value a lot. So let's say in the example we had in the notes, we were trying to calculate the opportunity cost of pizza. Remember, if you want to calculate the opportunity cost of pizza, pizza is a product that you want to produce more, you want to have more, so you want to gain, you want to produce, okay? But because of the scarcity, there is a cost. You have to give up some level of the other product you're producing. In that example, in lecture notes, we had robots. So it's the number of robots that we have to give up, okay? Or vice versa, all right? So there's no kind of magic formula when it comes to opportunity cost. It's just a definition that we are using. So definitely review PPC. That's pretty much it from one. In chapter two, review economics system we had, like laissez-faire, command market system, kind of briefly I didn't really give you much from these definitions. We talk about a specialization and division of labor. I did not give you any question, no question from comparative advantage, absolute advantage, so you can skip that part. We have 5 fundamental questions in econ. I just gave you, I think, one question on the final, nothing really complicated. The big part of chapter 2 is the circular flow. So I definitely want you guys to review circular flow. So I'm going to clear everything up. So from chapter 2, important part for you to review is the circular flow. Make sure you know all the assumptions. I made a video for that. Definitely watch that video again. Know that we have 2 markets. Remember that we talked about closed economy in here, so we don't have any trade, there's no government, there is no saving. Um, this in this circular flow, we had 2 flows. We had real flow, and then we had a money flow. Know the components of circular flow, like firms and businesses, like households, the 2 markets. Remember, we have a resource market and we have a product market. So you will get a few questions also from circular flow. So that's kind of the major part of chapter 2. Let's go to chapter 3. In chapter 3, we talked about demand and supply. Hopefully by now we're all comfortable with demand, quantity demanded, supply, quantity supplied. Um, so in chapter 3, in chapter 3, you need to know how we define demand. Remember that demand shows the relationship between price and quantity, right? We found an inverse relationship between price and quantity. We call this quantity that all the buyers are planning to purchase quantity demanded. If price goes up, quantity will go down, and vice versa. If price goes down, quantity demanded will go up. We call this law of demand, and we use this relationship to kind of draw our downward slope demand. That's how we figured out the shape of our demand. So make sure you kind of remember the shape of the demand, and also remember that price of the product changes, we are just going to move from one point to another point on the very same demand. But if anything other than price changes, we're going to shift our demand. It also applies to supply. So if income changes, if I don't know, consumers' preferences change, price of related good, expectations, all these factors will shift our demand to the right or to the left. If demand is increasing, we're going to shift our demand rightwards to the right hand side of B0 because this is our original demand. And if for any reason demand decreases, we are going to shift our demand leftwards, the left hand side of our original demand. Don't forget. So if price changes, I'm not going to write it down for supply because it's the same thing. If price changes, remember price of Apple in the very same market for Apple, there is no shift. We're just going to move from one point to another point on the very same demand. Remember, uh, here when we're saying shifting demand, we also have another price. That is not the price of Apple. The price of, let's say, oranges, if changes, the price of the demand for Apple will change. Remember, price of related goods substitute, right? Price of related goods or complementary related goods. And also here we talked about also future prices. If I'm talking about price of Apple next month, then there will be a shift in demand. There is no movement along. So don't be confused. We have one price here and one price here, price of related good, and future prices that are shifting our demand. This is the price of our product in the future, and this is the price of oranges, okay, which is related to let's say, Apple market. So these two are going to shift. If we are talking about price of Apple in the market for Apple, there is no shift, okay? Same thing applies to supply. So we also talked about supply in this market, okay? Supply. Supply shows the relationship between price and quantity supplied, which was the quantity quantity of goods and services that all the suppliers or producers are planning to sell or produce. The price and quantity supplied moved in the same direction because it's all about profit here. If the price of the product you're selling in the market is going up, as a producer, as a seller, you're going to supply more because you're going to make more money. If the price of the product you're selling at the market is going down, you're going to wait for the market to change. You are going to reduce the number of products that you're selling in the market. Your profit is just going down. We call this positive relationship between price and quantity law of supply. And we use this relationship to figure out the shape of our supply. Our supply, unlike demand, was upward slope. S, okay? Again, same thing applies to supply. If the price changes, we're moving from one point to another point. If anything other than supply changes, like your cost of production, like the expectation about future prices, or let's say um, your number of sellers changes in the market, all these factors will shift the supply. Again, if supply increases, we're going to shift our supply to the right hand side of S1, S0, sorry. S0 is my original supply. So this is the rightward shift. And if for any reason supply goes down, decreases, we're going to shift our supply to the left hand side of our original supply. So we have a new supply, S2. And we put demand and supply together to define our market equilibrium. So upward slope supply, downward slope demand. Right here is the market equilibrium, the intersection of demand and supply. At the equilibrium, we have only one price. We called it equilibrium price or P star. We have one quantity. We called it equilibrium Q or Q star. We talked about shortage and surplus. So definitely review how we define shortage and surplus. Okay. We talked about shifting the demand and supply at equilibrium. That's very important. And again, give you question. You had lots of questions in the first test on the shifting in demand and supply. So make sure to go back and review. And I gave you again few from this topic for the final. All right. So we changed the demand first. We kept the supply fixed. Then we changed the supply and we changed the demand. Again, I did some videos for you on that topic, so make sure you review those videos, okay? And then we had complex cases. Complex cases were those cases where we changed the demand and supply or shifted demand and supply at the same time. You can memorize these cases, or you can just, I don't know, draw graphs. That's what I like to do. I always encourage my students to draw graphs because sometimes we do not recall everything at the time of the test because of the time and the pressure of the test. So make sure you know how to draw them. So definitely, guys, practice and redraw all these graphs here. I cannot emphasize enough. But remember, if demand and supply both go up, then quantity, our quantity will go up, our price is unknown. Same thing for reduction in supply and demand. Price will be again unknown. This time the quantity will go down. If demand and supply move in the opposite direction, your price is known and you have no idea about your quantity unless the question tells you how much your demand and supply are changing. Okay, so you can get two different types of questions here. I can ask you, okay, demand and supply are both increasing and the market for apple, what will happen to quantity and price at the new equilibrium? So the correct answer will be that quantity is going up but my price is unknown. Or I can tell you, okay, demand and supply are both going up, they're both increasing, okay? But increase in demand is greater than the increase in supply. All right, so now I can draw a graph. This is where drawing graph is important and becomes handy if we want to memorize everything. Sometimes we do not remember everything. So P1, S1 are my original supply and demand. Point 1 is my original equilibrium, and P1, Q1 are also my initial price and quantity. So demand is going up, so I have to increase my demand. I have to shift my demand. I should be careful with how much I am shifting my demand. The question is telling me that increase in demand is greater, so I'm going to shift my demand rightward. I'm allowing my demand to increase a lot. So I'm shifting it this much to the right. I should do the same thing for supply. I'm going to shift my supply also rightward. But the increase in supply is not that significant compared to the increase in demand. So I'm shifting it to the right only by this much, okay? I'm no longer at point 1 since my supply and demand changed. I have a new equilibrium coming from new supply and new demand. So my new my new equilibrium is right here. So new equilibrium, let's check out the price. Price went up as well as the quantity. So both price and quantity in this case went up. You can try and practice other cases. Let's say increase in supply is greater than increase in demand. Or you can try a case where the increase in demand is greater than the reduction in supply and check your answers. You can, again, memorize everything, but I do not recommend. Okay. All right. We also talked about at the end of this kind of chapter, we talked about price ceiling, price floor. Make sure that you review um, how we defined this price control, price ceiling, price floor. And remember that let me just write it down. So we had price ceiling and price floor. Remember that price ceiling, PQ, SB, price ceiling, if this is the P star or equilibrium price, your price ceiling is always below and the price floor is always above the equilibrium price, okay? Example for price ceiling was rent control, and a good example for price floor is minimum wage, all right? So because of the price ceiling, we always have shortage in the market, and because of price floor, we always have surplus. And remember, the government controls price ceiling and price floor, all right? That's pretty much it from chapter 3. Let's move on to chapter 4. Chapter 4 was about market failure, okay? So you need to know the definition of market failure, the reasons behind market failure. The reasons behind market failure were demand side market failure, when the demand doesn't show how much the buyers are willing to pay, supply side market failure. And the other source was the supply side market failure. And it was when the supply doesn't show the actual cost of production. We talked about two examples of market failure. We had public goods. Know the characteristics of public goods. Public goods, remember, are non-rival, non-excludable. And of course, we talked about the reason why we're saying that public good is an example of market failure. Um, and we also talked about private good, okay, and quasi-public. I'm just pausing because I'm just behind my notes. I was just going way too fast, okay? And so know the characteristics of private, public, or quasi-public. And remember that we discussed about the free rider problem. It was the free rider, no free, let me write it down. Free rider problem. And remember, because of this free rider problem, we're saying that public good is an example of market failure. All right. And then we talked about positive and negative externalities. Okay, so for positive externalities, remember that we're talking about extra benefit that one person passes to others in the society, like education, vaccines. And negative externality is the extra cost that one person passes to others in the society. The example was pollution. Remember also that we're saying that public goods are an example of um, demand side market failure, because of this free rider problem, okay, market failure. And public goods create underproduction, okay. That's why we need government to take care of producing public goods. Positive externalities are also example of demand side market failure. Handwriting is horrible here. And they create also under production. Okay, and remember the solution that we had for positive externality was subsidy. Subsidy is the solution. Negative externalities was example of supply side market failure. It creates overproduction, and solution was tax. Okay, so I used underproduction, overproduction terminology. So definitely make sure you go back and review what it means. Remember that market failure in general is when the market makes a mistake and the market is not capable of producing the right amount of product. So the market can produce more than what the market needs. We called it overproduction, or sometimes the market produces less than what we need. We called it underproduction. And also another thing I wanted to review in this chapter is the concept of consumer surplus and producer surplus. Remember, consumer surplus is the maximum price willing to pay minus the equilibrium price or the market price, and producer surplus is P star, which is the equilibrium price, minus the minimum acceptable price, okay? Oops, price. Also from the graph, let me just draw the equilibrium quickly. Supply, demand. This area right here, and this is P star. This area right here in red is consumer surplus or CS. And this yellow area is producer surplus. I am going, that's pretty much it from 4. I'm going to skip 5 because it's just definition. So read all the definition. It was about government failure. I'm just going to move on to chapter 6. In chapter 6, we talked about elasticity. So you need to know how we define ED. It was price elasticity of demand. It measures how sensitive the buyers are to changes in price. We had 2 formulas. So definitely review the formulas we had. Look at the examples we had. We had ES, price elasticity of supply. Again, we had 2 formulas here for ED and ES. Remember, we compared our answers with number 1 to figure out if our supply and demand are elastic, inelastic, unidelastic. Remember, if ED or ES doesn't matter, they are greater than 1, demand is elastic, less than 1 inelastic, equal 1 unidelastic. And of course, we had extreme cases where price elasticity of demand was 0. We called it perfectly inelastic. And when the price elasticity of demand was infinity, we called it perfectly elastic demand. Same thing for supply. For supply, we also talked about time. So definitely review that part where we talked about short run, long run, immediate, short run. Okay. We also talked about EI, income elasticity. We only had 1 formula here, and we were just looking at the sign. We are not going to compare our answers with number 1. If EI was greater than 0, it was positive, the product was normal in the question. If EI was less than 1, the product was inferior. And then we talked about EXY. It was cross elasticity. We only had again 1 formula and we cared about the sign. If we were trying by the looking at the sign of EXY to figure out the relationship between X and Y. If EXY was positive, X and Y were substitute. If EXY was negative, X and Y were complementary. All right. One thing that we also discussed that was related to ED was total revenue test. You can figure out elasticity, um, demand elasticity by looking at the relationship between price and your total revenue. What is total revenue? As a reminder, you should know it by now. It's price times quantity because we talked about profit maximization. So if price goes up, your total revenue goes up, or if your price goes down and your TR also decreases, and since they are moving in the same direction, your demand is inelastic. Okay. If your price goes up, but your TR goes down, or vice versa, if price goes down, your TR goes up, they're moving in the opposite direction, then your demand is elastic. If your price goes up or down and there's no change in total revenue, then your demand is unidelastic. And we also talked about linear demand, okay? Remember that the elasticity changes along linear demand. The higher price level, linear demand is always elastic. So D is always greater than 1. Right in the middle, the price elasticity is equal to 1. It's unit elastic. And at the lower price level, our price elasticity is always less than 1. Demand is inelastic. And if you remember, we used this concept in chapter 12 when we were talking about profit maximization and finding the price for our monopolies, okay? That's pretty much from chapter 6. Guys, review all the definitions, okay? Chapter 7 was about utility. So you define utility, we define total utility, marginal utility. Make sure you know how to calculate marginal utility. Total utility was your total satisfaction from consumption. Again, you can have all the formulas in front of you. I don't mind. Make sure you know how to use them, as I always told you. So this is the formula for marginal utility. And remember that the marginal utility goes down as we produce, sorry, as we consume more and more. So this was the shape of our TU. Very quickly, have everything on the notes. So it increases very fast. It kind of goes down slowly, reaches the max, and then goes down. This is TU. And then for MU, goes down, okay, it becomes 0 when when your total utility is max. This is where mu is 0, and then keeps going down. Here it becomes negative, so your mu will be negative here. This is where your tu is going down. We also learned in this chapter how our consumers can maximize their utility, and we know by now we can use the consumer equilibrium condition to maximize that utility. And this consumer equilibrium tells us that marginal utility of, let's say, good A or good 1 that we consume divided by its price should be equal to, let's say, marginal utility of good 2. And let's say we are only consuming 2 products, okay? 1, 2. Okay, it says that the marginal utility per dollar of all the goods and services that we consume should be equal, then we can maximize the utility. Okay, so don't forget this important um, um, condition or formula, I should say. We can, of course, expand this formula. Look at the practice question for the second test, okay? Because in reality, we consume more than 2 goods, right? So you can definitely expand it. We skipped chapter 8, chapter 9, and I'm kind of behind my notes, so let me bring up my notes. I don't want to miss anything. Chapter 9 was about short-term production and short-term cost. So make sure that you know all the graphs and formulas. You know how important this chapter is. Chapter 9, let me find it. 999. I told you everything. I kind of know all the chapters and even the order of each chapter, but I just don't want to miss anything. Let's see. Okay. Chapter 9. All right. So short run, the short run production, we talked about, switch back. Okay, so we talked about short run. Remember, we defined short run, long run in chapter 6. We going to define them again in chapter 9, so make sure you review that. Remember, in the short run, let me see, let me write production, okay? We're focused on labor as the only kind of input we can change. And we were trying to figure out the optimal number of labor we should hire in the short run, and also the optimal number of product that we should produce in the short run. We had important concepts like TP, total product, marginal product, and average product, okay? Average product was also our labor productivity, all right? So make sure you know how to, for instance, calculate marginal product, okay, or average product. Average product is your TP divided by labor. Your marginal product is the change in total product divided by change in labor, okay? And typically your labor actually goes up by just 1. But remember, in the short run, you cannot change capital, your land, nothing, okay? Nothing. That's the only thing you can change is your labor, all right? So pay attention to the graph. Let me find it, and let's see if I can switch. Um, oh, I can't. Okay. So we had this graph where we had total product at top, and then we had marginal product, average product. I also did a video for you, so I'm not going to spend time redrawing everything. Please watch that video where I went kind of step by step, talking about the relationship between total product, marginal product, and average product. We talked about fixed cost, variable cost, total cost, if you remember. So I'm just going to remind you here. So definitely check out the graph, because sometimes, obviously, I'm not going to ask you to draw anything for the test, but I can ask questions from the graph, right? We talked about costs in short run. If you remember, we talked about total fixed cost, total variable cost, total cost graph. So we had one diagram here, and then we talked about um, AFC, which is TFC divided by quantity. We had average variable cost, we had average total cost, and then we had MC. Again, in the very same video that I did production of, we also talked about costs, all right? So make sure you definitely review and redraw that diagrams we had in this chapter, okay? And one important formula here was that PC is TFC plus TVC. This is your fixed cost, this is your variable cost. And also for average total cost, you can say it is TC divided by Q, or you can say that ATC is average fixed cost plus average variable cost. Sometimes it's easier to use this one, sometimes it's easier to use this formula. Remember, you can also play around with all of these formulas. For instance, sometimes to calculate your total variable cost, you can use your average variable cost. Okay, so sometimes I don't give you the total variable cost, but I give you the average variable cost. If you multiply the average, look at the formula, you can have the formulas in front of you, as I said. So if you multiply the average variable cost by quantity, you can get your TBC, because your AVC, this is just an example, is TVC divided by Q. This is the formula you have, but if you rearrange it, your TVC will be AVC times quantity, right? So make sure you know how to play around with all these formulas, all right? We put together this cost and production, and we saw how they are related. And at the end, we talked about the end of this chapter, we talked about long run cost briefly. And we only looked at the average total cost in the long run Q, and all the costs here, okay? Right. For the long run cost, just remember the shape is U, right? Of course, mine is kind of an exaggerated U because I want to show you something, but it's a U shape. We call this part of this long run average total cost economies of scale. What does it mean? It means that you are producing more, right? Look, your cost per unit of output is going down. This is a place that businesses want to be in the long run, and it's pretty tricky. Okay, you're producing more, your cost per unit of output is going down. Um, if you increase your input, remember in the long run, you can change capital, labor, land, anything, right? Labor, it's different than short run. So if you increase your input, let's say by 2%, your output here will go up by more than 2%. Why? Because your average total cost is going down, okay? We call this kind of flat part of this U-shaped cost constant returns to scale. Your cost per unit of output is fixed, constant returns to scale. And this part was this economies of scale. Okay, so in here, in this area, the constant returns to scale. You are producing more and more, but your cost per unit of output is fixed. It is not as ideal as the economies of scale, but it still is not a bad idea to produce at this part of the long run cost curve. Why? Because you are controlling your cost, right? Your cost is fixed. So the kind of the way that you can increase your margins, your margins for the profit is to produce more, okay? To duplicate your production line. That's how you can make money when you are dealing with constant returns to scale. And remember that the auto industry, they typically operate at the constant returns to scale part. Okay, so not a bad idea to be at the constant returns to scale. Economies of scale is the best part. And then we have these economies of scale. It means that you are producing more. Look, you are producing more, and see what's happening to your cost. Your cost per unit of output is increasing. So you have to cut back your production as soon as you enter these economies of scale part. It's just dangerous for your business. And typically we see businesses that they're operating here when they are too big, they're producing too much, they have no control over their firm. There are different layers of management in the firm. There's miscommunication among people in the firm, in the company. And as I said, the size is just too big that they cannot control the firm. So they're producing the wrong amount of output, right? Obviously. So they're producing more, but at a higher cost, okay? So that's pretty much it from long run cost. Just know the characteristic of different parts of it. And then we talked about chapter 10. Chapter 10 was profit maximization in perfect competition market. Remember, we talked about competition market. Remember, we talked about different characteristics of perfect competition, monopolistic competition at the beginning of this chapter, oligopoly, monopoly. Definitely, guys, review that little table we had at the beginning of chapter 10, all right? And then we'll learn that in perfect competition market, how businesses can maximize their profit. And firms in this competition, they were all price takers. They could not control the price. So the price was given, but it was important for us to find the optimal amount of output that businesses should produce. And we were able to find that optimal amount of output by two different approaches. The first one was total revenue and total cost approach. Is where you calculate profit, which is TR minus TC. Then you find the maximum profit. And then you basically can find this optimal quantity by looking at the maximum profit. Wherever your profit is maximum, you can pick that quantity that is giving you the maximum profit. So we are kind of like moving backwards. To find this Q, you have to calculate your profit and find that maximum profit, okay? Or you could use MR and MC approach. You calculate your marginal revenue, calculate your marginal cost. Wherever your marginal revenue equals to your marginal cost, then your quantity is one more time optimal. Okay, result from this approach and this approach will be the same. Two different ways of finding this Q. And remember that quantity in this, demand in this market, the market demand was different from one firm's demand. You have the typical shape of downward slope demand in the market. This is the market demand, okay? So the market demand is just downward slope. But if you remember, the demand for one firm was perfectly elastic because of this. Our firms are price takers, okay? So our demand was perfectly elastic for one firm. So this is for one firm, and this is market. I know it's not that downward. This is downward, okay? Downward, okay? Downward slope demand for the market. We had a perfectly elastic demand, which was the same as price, as marginal revenue, as average revenue, okay? And then we looked into, use this one. And then we looked into, just give me 1 second. Again, I'm behind my notes. We looked into, sorry, we looked into finding profit, okay? Um, oh, what is happening to my notes? Okay, all right. So I'm going to draw first, let me clear everything up. I am going to draw TRTC, TR and TC approach for you, okay, and how we can find profit. So I'm going to put TRTC here, quantity here. If you remember, the TR was the total revenue, price times quantity. It goes up as you produce more and more and more. Price is fixed, obviously, in this market, but as you produce more quantity, your TR will go up. So you're multiplying quantity by a fixed number, definitely your TR will go up, right? And then hopefully we remember the shape of our TC, total cost, from chapter 9. That's the graph that I told you to review. And just to quickly kind of remind you, this was the fixed cost. I'm taking basically, I'm going to put all the costs here and then quantity here, the chapter 9, chapter 9. And then this was the shape of our TVC, and then this was the shape of our TC. Again, my handwriting is horrible and my graphs are not accurate here. Definitely look at my notes, okay? So I am going to take this TC and I'm going to add it here. Why? Because I need my TC here. So I'm going to bring this here. I'm going to add it here. This is my TC. All right. So where is my profit? Profit is TR minus TC. So difference between TR and TC, distance between these two is my profit. What is happening here? Let me just kind of tell you what's going on. Only between these 2 points, let's say quantity 10 and quantity 50, my profit is positive. Why? TR is greater than TC, right? TR greater than TC. Can you see? TR is green, TC is TC is red. So TR is higher than TC is greater, so it's positive. Okay. So right here, my profit is positive, but it's not maximum. I'm going to tell you how you can find it. Find a maximum. And right here, look, my cost is greater than TR. So I'm not making any money, right? And it's normal for businesses to not make any money when they just start the business, right? Because your initial cost is pretty high. And right here, my TR equals TC. My profit is 0. We called it normal profit again in chapter 9, normal profit. By the way, I have 2 normal profit. I also have another 0 profit point, right? So the profit is positive only between the 2 normal profit points, or the break-even points, another name we have, or break-even points. Same thing here. As you produce beyond 50 units of output, again, one more time, your TR is greater than your TC, so we're going to lose money. Where the profit is max, so it's better for us to produce only here, right? It's the best if we produce here, to produce this much output, let's say 30 units of output. Why? Because if you find the longest distance between TR and TC, which is somehow here, you can maximize your profit. This is where your profit is maximum. If you go beyond 30 units of output, you are still making positive profit. You are still making money, but remember that your profit is shrinking. Your profit is just going down. Look at the distance between TR and TC. It's getting smaller and smaller. Makes sense? Hopefully it does. Let me also draw MRMC. Okay, and then we're almost done. I know it's a lot of things that I'm talking about, and I have no idea how long this video is gonna be, but I'm just doing my best to kind of go over important stuff. All right, now let me change my color. Now MRMC. All right, so I have price, I have cost, I have MR. This is Q. Obviously, I need my MR, which is same as AR, same as price, right, in this market. And then I need my MC, marginal cost. And hopefully we remember again from chapter 9 that MC was U-shape. MC. The intersection of MR and MC will give me that optimal Q, right? Remember? So this is where they are equal. So I can come all the way down to find my optimal Q. That's the optimal Q. Remember, Q is the only thing we want to find out, right? And we found it. And even in the previous example for total revenue, total cost, the optimal quantity was 30 units of output. Okay, remember, price is given, but you have to find your Q all the time in perfect competition market. We found it from PRTC that optimal Q was 30 units of output. And in this example, it's Q star. You can put a number if you're not comfortable with Q star, call it again 30, okay? It doesn't really matter. Since I'm going to show you the profit, I need to add my TC and my ATC and my AVC. So I'm going to start with, and again, from chapter 9 again, AVC and ATC, average variable cost, average total cost, they were both also U-shape, right? They are getting closer and closer as you produce more and more. But the average fixed cost is going down, right? As we produce more. Review that video that I drew everything for you, right? So let me show you how you can get profit. So this is P, remember, this is P. So my total revenue is price times quantity, right? So this area here is my total revenue, okay? My total revenue, okay? And let me show you TC. Then I'm gonna change my graph a little bit later, okay? I don't have TC, total cost, don't you agree? But if I multiply my average total cost by quantity, I can get my TC, right? So I have the average total cost. So for this quantity, let me go all the way up to my average total cost. I'm multiplying it by my Q. Let me change my color. No, hold on. Okay. This area is my total cost. Look. So the purple area is TC, orange area is TR. As you can see, my TC is greater than my TR. So in this graph that I just drew, we do not have any profit. Don't you agree? My TC is greater than TR. I drew this way because I wanted to remind you, also review the shutdown case. Shutdown case. All right. So whenever you see that the business is not making money in the short run in perfect competition, we have to think about shutdown case. And I did an example in one of the videos. Definitely go back and review. I'm not going to spend time talking about it. Just to kind of remind you what the shutdown case is. When businesses are not making money in the short run, they have two options. They can shut down. What does it mean? It means that they're not going to produce anything. Since they want to stay in business, are going to pay their rent, their mortgage, their insurance. They're going to pay their fixed cost, total fixed cost. If, write it here, if this TFC is less than the money that they are losing, they are going to shut down because they are going to save money. Remember, even when you pay your fixed costs, you are still paying something that you are losing. And of course, obviously, you are not making any money, you are still losing, but you are going to shut down if the money that you are losing here by paying your rent and your mortgage is less than this loss. You're going to shut down. You're going to take a little break, wait for the market to change. Another option that businesses have when they face with this loss is keep keep producing that Q star we have here. When does that happen? If the total fixed cost is greater than loss, you should not shut down. Do not shut down. Deal with your loss. It might get better, okay? Because you are going to lose more if you shut down. Shutting down is expensive. So in this graph that I just drew for you, there is no profit, okay? Let me draw another graph quickly where we have profit, okay? Or you can just check the notes. What should I do? Let me skip this part because it's already pretty long. Um, the other graph, you have it in the notes, is where your company is making money. And if you compare the graph that I just drew for you with that graph in the notes in chapter 10, you can see the way that I drew my average total cost is different. My average total cost was greater than my also average variable cost. They were both above my marginal revenue or my price line. Okay, that's why business is not making money, because the marginal revenue is less than the average variable cost. So whenever your marginal revenue is less than your average variable cost, you're not making any money. Okay, to make money, your average variable cost should be less than your marginal revenue. Okay, so I want you to review these two graphs. Okay, and definitely shut down case and video that I've made for you. Let's move on to chapter 12, to monopoly. We're almost done. Review again the characteristics of monopoly, like single firm in the market. We have unique product. Getting into market is impossible. Um, and then we talked about profit maximization in monopoly market. And if you remember, in the monopoly market, the business always make money in the short run. There is no shutdown case in perfect monopoly market. Let me quickly show you, and remember that in the monopoly market, our um, monopoly, and this is chapter 12. In the monopoly market, I can also put my costs and everything else in here. Our market demand was the same as our one firm demand, right? And what did I do? I wrote what I just said. Our market demand is the same as one firm's demand, and it is downward slope, which is no longer perfectly elastic. Our marginal revenue is not fixed like perfect competition. It is downward slope. You can compare it with, of course, chapter 10, perfect competition market. Okay, and let me now show you profit. So to figure out the profit, I need to add my marginal cost, U-shaped marginal cost. Remember that in this market, we have to look for price and we have to look for quantity, okay? Perfect competition, we were only looking for quantity because price was given, because our firms were price takers, but here, our only firm in this market is price maker, okay? But still, to find this quantity, we're going to use MRMC rule. So whenever a marginal revenue equals marginal cost, which is down here, our quantity is max. To find the price, you should go all the way up the elastic part of the linear demand. See, the demand is linear, right? And our monopolies, if you remember, always pick a price at the elastic part of their demand. That's the key for making money. So that's P star, okay? So this area in red price times Q is the total revenue, right? TR is total revenue. Let me add my average total cost. It's U-shape, ATC. And for this quantity, I can go all the way up to my ATC. Remember, TC, total cost, is ATC times Q. So I'm trying to use the average total cost to find TC because I'm trying to show you TRTC is always positive here. This red area was my TR, price times Q, right? So I'm using this formula, ATC times Q, to figure out my TC. And my TC is, this is Q. Do you agree? This is Q. Sorry, this is ATC and this is Q, right? This is Q and this is ATC. So I'm multiplying ATC by Q. So this green area is my total cost. As you can see, red area, which is TR, is greater than the green area, which is TC. So the difference between TR and TC is profit. So this yellow area is my profit, and profit is always, always positive in Monopoly. Okay. Let's move on to chapter 13. As I told you before, I am not going to ask any question about profit maximization in the oligopoly and monopolistic competition. Know the characteristics of monopolistic competition and oligopoly. I promise I will ask simple questions, okay? So no question on that. Just know how different they are in terms of the number of firms in the market, in terms of size of the market, the type of product. Know the examples that we had in chapter 10. What else? But no specific question from profit maximization, because I do understand that it is kind of an advanced kind of topic. If you are an econ major, you will learn more in your future courses. I just wanted to introduce the market, both markets, monopolistic competition and oligopoly, in chapter 13, but nothing really, but I'm not going to ask anything about like profit maximization in this market, if it makes sense. But I just wanted you to be exposed with the idea of these two markets, okay? Because we kind of covered the perfect competition and monopoly, but no question from profit maximization in chapter 13, I promise you, okay? Okay, done. I have to drink something now. I talked a lot. I hope, guys, that you that you find this video helpful. Study hard for the final. Let me know if you have any question, and review all those stuff that I told you. And good luck on the final. Bye.